So now on the show, we've got the brilliant Dennis McShane, former Labour MP. Thanks for coming, Dennis. And the very lovely Belinda De Lucy, former MEP. We're in the Parsons Pig this week in Crawley, stranger venue, but look at the food they put on. It's absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely Spanish. So big thanks to the staff here. I've had better weeks. And we ain't going to talk about it. We'll talk about something completely different. Or shall we? Let's talk about British values. Let's talk about a British way of life, and let's talk about how things have changed over the years. And let's also talk about the right to free speech in this country. Dennis, you're a little bit older than me, a lot older than Belinda. That's not an ageist comment, by the way. How have things changed over the years? Have they changed for the better or for the worse?
Every freedom had to be fought for. Every freedom required a mob, to coin a fashionable phrase, to shake down the railings of Hyde Park to get the vote. Every freedom had to have the mob in Cable Street to stop the Daily Mail attacking Jews and printing the address in the King's Road, London, of the British Union of Fascists and urging people to join it. Now, a lot of I was involved in some strikes, not like any minor strike, I'd hasten to add, but that also required pressure, because the guys in charge, the blob, the money men, have never given anything to the working people of Britain without real pressure.
Like the Labour Party.
The Labour Party, let's be quite serious. You want me to list all the reforms that were brought in? I want
you to talk, Dennis, about are things better today than they were in the 50s, 60s, 70s?
I certainly think so. I wrote a pamphlet in 1978 called Black and White Race Reporting in Britain, and I did a research then, 1978, not a single black journalist or Asian journalist was employed by the BBC or ITN or on newspapers. Now, quite rightly, we were like with the Prime Minister, we've got stars of Britain on TV. At the time, I was denounced in the Times by a major columnist called Bernard Levin, writing noddy language. This isn't necessary. So, yes, I think things are...
Belinda, I know you're dying to come in here, aren't you?
Well,
You've got children.
Yeah, I've got
4
teenagers.
First thought in a debate like this, what sort of country your daughter's been brought up in?
Well, I feel very much it's a responsibility for the older generation to pass the baton down to the younger generations of the freedoms that were fought for, men and women sacrificed their lives for. And I do think they're under threat because we've gone too far the other way. You know, I wouldn't so much like to go back to the 50s and 60s, but the 90s for me were the peak year. It wasn't perfect, but race relations were getting much better. Women's rights were probably the best they've been. And then all of a sudden came this monstrosity of woke identity politics that has actually harmed race relations. We now have anti-white racism being normalised on TV. We now have theatres saying they're disinviting white people because they want black-only audience to save them from the white gaze. This is all now acceptable racist speech, but because it's against white people, you know, the Lib left sanction it. And I think that's a terrible road to go down with BLM, critical race theory, infiltrating so much of our public sector.
And better under a Labour government?
Much worse under a Labour government, especially as they bring in sort of through the back door blasphemy laws. You know, we've spent centuries in this country having the right to free speech, being able to criticise ideas and religions, and that's going to be taken away from us soon if we let Labour and Lib Dems have their redefinition of, say, for example, Islamophobia. Totally against anti-Muslim bigotry, of course, but where the definition is expanded to, you know, any kind of prejudice against a religion, why can't people be prejudiced against some religions? With
I have no problems with that, Lee.
Especially as a woman, when I see how it's interpreted.
Let me just say, I'd be a little more relaxed in this excellent conversation if somebody here was not white, because you're speaking for black people, I'm speaking for black race, Lee is. Let them speak for themselves, but they're always silenced. Now, to go back to the religion point, I couldn't agree more. One of the big tensions was when I was negotiating the European so-called constitutional treaty. I'm not getting into Europe, don't worry, Lee. But the Vatican was lobbying very heavily to put a line in about banning Catholic attacks on Catholic phobia attacks, if you like. And I said, with Jack Straw's support, with the help of the French, you must be joking. Religion has to stand on its own 2 feet. It's oppressed, different religions have oppressed different people over centuries, if not millennia, and the religion must be criticised, open to criticism, which is why, stand by for shock, all Labour friends, shut your ears. I actually agree with Kemi Badenoch. Islamophobia is the wrong phrase. Muslim phobia, of which too many people on the right are actually stoking up that at the moment, is what we should talk about. Defend the person, not his beliefs.
So, Dennis, we have to be very careful with our language, with our choice of words, and when religion's brought into the argument, it can get little bit tricky sometimes, and people lay traps and try and trip you up. But it's important to remember that for certain religions, maybe Christianity or Islam, when you criticise a person, you're not by definition criticising their religion, you're criticising the person, surely.
It just depends in the terms of reference. If I say Islamists or Muslims have got control of somebody or something in England, some people will agree, some people won't. If I say Jews have got control of anything in England, the heavens fall in on me, because that was quite common language in the 1930s, 40s. Read any John Buchan thriller novel, and the references to Jews are really disgusting. I think they're still on sale. So that's just my own personal distinction. Don't play the man, play the ball. If you don't like aspects of a religion, that's been a debate for 3,000 or 4,000 years.
Belinda, don't play the man, play the ball. Has he got a point?
I'm just thinking, I think it's slightly, you make a good point, but it is different because there's actual evidence and there's many examples of threatening and intimidating behaviour in this country that is shaping policy and curtailing free speech. You have the Batley teacher still in hiding 3 years now. No politician in the Tory party or the Labour Party has the spine to speak publicly about that. That's a horrendous breach of what's important to the fabric of our society and free speech. You've got the autistic boy that was hauled before Islamist clerics because he scuffed a Quran. The humiliation that boy went through. These things are visually so upsetting to many numbers of Brits because they're thinking, gosh, what's happened to our country? How is it allowed to become intimidated by this threatening radical Islamist movement that has been given sanctuary by the hard left? The two almost work together now to shape and put pressure and frighten people. I've lived in areas before. I've been terrified of the actions of Islamist men towards me. Very different from the Muslim community, by the way, because Islamism is a punishing ideology, whereas Muslim community I think works very well in this country. The Islamists though have got a lot of power to make people frightened about what they say and what they do, and that is our politicians and authorities being too weak to stand up to them. Ever since Salman Rushdie got a fatwa, we've been allowing a lot of violent threats and protests and anti-Britishness and to come onto our streets.
Over to you, Dennis.
When I wrote a book called Globalising Hatred and the New Anti-Semitism, I was sanctioned partly by the press because I said 20 years ago in a speech that Islamism is a real threat, the ideology of Islamism. Now, the Labour Party doesn't give sanctuary to these people. That's ridiculous. They actually cause immense turmoil and trouble. I mean, I'm in the Labour Party. I know that. In the 2005 election...
So is Jeremy Corbyn.
He's not, thank God.
No, he is.
He's up.
But Keir Starmer, the leader, supported Jeremy when Jeremy said he was friends with Hamas. There are elements of the Labour Party people have a right to be concerned about.
Every politician, and I don't want to cite the most distinguished politicians we've got on our sofa today, is crucified for something he said that was wrong 10 or whatever number of years ago. I'm not going to go through Nigel Farage, and I like Nigel, but my God, he said some wacko things. Now, 2005 election, I had the Islamist, it's called the Muslim Public Affairs Committee, organising a protest against me outside a mosque where I was speaking, because mosques are also open to any outsiders. It's not just a religious ceremony. Shouting out to everybody, vote BNP, get rid of McShane, vote BNP. Now, you'll know, Lee, BNP was an openly fascist, anti-Semitic, racist party. So there we are. George Galloway allied with the BNP at some stage in one of his campaigns. He's allied with everybody. That's the problem. You've got too much hate generally in this country.
That's a long time ago. What we're now facing is a different threat, which people don't feel they are free to address publicly as much as they'd have been free to have a go at the BNP rallies. But you politicians are reaping what you sow. The amount of championing of unconditional immigration and diversity at all costs, and everything needs to be knelt at the altar of multiculturalism. This is what happens when you don't put integration policies in.
This 12 minutes has flown by.
Do something.
Belinda's on a high horse. I think that's 1-0 to Belinda. But I've got to cut you short, Dennis.
You are, Lee, so you do something about it.